Hello, Trekkies! This block contains quite a few episodes that take some time for deep self-exploration, and we generally find some great character development. This is Best of Trek, Worst of Trek. I'm your host, Dustin Wing. Starting us off at 323, Data irradiates a village. Or thine own self. As Deanna returns from a conference, she feels pressure to look at her sideways moving career stuck at Lieutenant Commander for years. Bev, playing Night Court Captain, convinces her to take the Bridge Officer's test, in which she ultimately has to order friends to their death to fill in that hollow pip. Meanwhile, Data was sent to retrieve radioactive material from a probe that crashed on a planet with a pre-warp society. The radiation affects him in a weird way that makes him forget who he is, and he carries his case full of death across hundreds of miles till he ends up in a village and trades his warm metal for money, as he tries to figure out who he is. He's like if Bill Nye the Science Guy and Robin Hood were mashed together into a character. As people around town start getting sick, they blame him, even as he works out a cure and saves them, as they give him his second of 4 deaths in the franchise. In a Frankenstein pitchforks and torches moment, Picard only shows up at the end because contractual obligations. Patrick Stewart was doing his one-man Christmas Carol at the time. Nothing bad to say about this one, especially for TNG's mediocre 7th season. Finding something to live for at 322, Death Wish. Or Extreme Risk. This is one of Trek's better mental health episodes, as we see B'Elanna has been doing high-risk simulations in the holodeck with the safeties off. Chakotay finally forces her to face her pain, in a simulation she created watching Maquis friends slaughtered by the Dominion. This is a good likening to self-harm that started to get taken more seriously in the 90s, and a great show of the supports that people need, and she's had in place all along in her crewmates. The other main plot going on sees the crew trying to retrieve their multispatial probe before the Malon can from stuck in the atmosphere of a gas giant. Somehow the solution isn't just to build another probe, but to build an entire advanced auxiliary craft capable of going to get it. And thus, the Delta Flyer is born. Albeit without diametric tail fins. A craft that will go on to see a lot of use and a complete rebuild over the final 3 seasons of the show's run. Going in for the kill at 321, Belly of the Beast, or Bliss. The crew is ecstatic when a wormhole leading directly to Earth is discovered. Seven and Naomi Wildman, though, are dubious of this wormhole. And while trying to take over the ship to prevent them from going in, Seven's incapacitated and wakes up inside a giant space-dwelling life form that lures you in with telepathic misrepresentations of things you want most. The rest of the episode sees Seven, the captain's assistant, and not Data's grandpa escaping the creature, only for Captain Ahab to go right back to hunting his spacefaring white whale, even though his ship was in pretty rough shape while inside the creature earlier. A very dark and ominous sci-fi adventure. Getting a lap full of grudge at 320, Fighting Back. Or The Sanctuary. There's so many microplots going on, I guess this Jonathan Frakes directed episode is about Kwajong and its dealings with the Emerald Chain. This one sets up pretty much everything in the back half of Discovery's Season 3. In one of the best pre-credit intros in Discovery, we're introduced to Osira, the leader of the Federation's biggest rival, the Emerald Chain. Seems she's not impressed with her nephew after Burnham and Georgiou liberated all his slaves previously, and tears him up. We know from her first introduction, Osira is a monster and absolutely means business. Georgiou isn't dealing with her debilitation well, and lashes out through the episode at everyone trying to help her as she's slowly ripped apart by time. Discovery is here at Kwajong, Book's home, where they get involved with pesticides from the chain used to kill sea locusts, destroying the land. Though it turns out in the end, Tirax and his brother just needed to do some druid stuff instead of using poison. The chain isn't happy about this, and Osira herself pays a visit and decides to carpet bomb the planet until Discovery interferes. And Saru sets the Federation on a path of war with the chain. Simultaneously, the escaped Andorian Rin, played by Mary Wiseman's real-life husband, and the not super emotionally stable Detmer fly the mission to stop Osira in Book's ship. This finally gives Detmer a new breath of life about herself after coming to the future. It also provides Grudge an awesome moment of comedic relief, in a chance to reenact the classic Alien Discovers a Cat cartoon right in the middle of the battle, as he ends up holding a grudge. Also, Adira comes out with their pronouns for the first time in this episode. This is also the first time Discovery detects the old Federation distress call from the dilithium-rich Verubin Nebula that will become very important towards the end of the season. There's so much in this episode, there's something to like for everyone. Getting caught at 319, professional relationships, or booby trap. Geordi, the hopeless romantic, fails to impress a date with Coco No-Nos and violin music. But when the Enterprise finds itself caught in a nearly 1,000-year-old booby trap that sucks energy out of their systems, Geordi runs a holo-simulation of the original drafting room where the Enterprise was designed, to try and figure out how they have enough power to escape the trap. He accidentally gets the computer to create his new woman from Fantasy Island, Leah Brahms. The childlike music when the hologram gains personality is one of the worst music cues across Trek. The rest of the episode is mostly her and Geordi working together, and the chemistry between the actors is evident. Their work does lead to an overhaul and increase in efficiency for the dilithium crystal chamber. But in the end, their work to figure out how to escape the trap is ultimately thrown away, and we get to see how good of a helmsman Picard really is. Rather than clearing his browser history, Geordi doubles down on being creepy at the close, having the moonlight date he failed at with the Hollow of Brahms. This one itself is perfectly average, and the crew dealing with a deadly situation to the best of their ability. Being an unwilling assassin at 318, reprogrammed. Or the Mind's Eye. Geordi sure is having a time in this block. In this episode, he can't even get to Risa and finally enjoy some appropriate non-holo love. The Romulans pick him up, and in the first appearance of one of my favorite recurring Trek actors, John Fleck, who subjects him to seriously uncomfortable brainwashing. This is also our first indication from the shadows that Denise Crosby was coming back to the show. He's sent back to the Enterprise with the goal of destabilizing relations between the Klingons and Federation by killing the governor of an outlying Klingon world the Enterprise is visiting to put down fears that the Federation is supporting rebellion. Data puts together what's going on by the end and has LaForge taken into custody just before he carries out his programmed assassination. Deanna gets to do some rare, meaningful counseling for Geordi, helping him peel back the layers of onion that were fake memories given to him by the Romulans. This episode is wonderful setup for the next half-season arc involving the Klingons and Romulans. Getting a well-deserved break at 317, PTSD. Or home. Another episode of self-exploration as the crew of Enterprise finally make it home, after stopping the Xindi from destroying Earth and being flung 200 years into the past to stop a time traveler. They're greeted with a hero's welcome. But soon they find out it's not quite the Earth they remember. Through Phlox, we see that xeno-racism is alive and well, and that will pay off again at the end of the season. Archer goes and climbs a rock to get away from all the noise and try to truly process what they've been through, and the morally questionable actions he took. His old flame and soon-to-be captain of NX-02 Columbia follows him and tries to help him offload some of the emotional baggage he takes up the mountain with him. This is one of the best moments of self-reflection in the franchise. T'Pol goes home to Vulcan and takes Trip along for the ride, which sees the episode ending in heartbreak for Trip as T'Pol goes through with her prearranged marriage and all he can do is watch. A really slow episode of Trek, but spectacular in the realm of mental health. Stopping a weapon of mass destruction at 316, Broken Arrow. Or Dreadnought. As Samantha Wildman is trying to come up with a name for her baby, Tom sets up his bad boy routine to pay off later in the season, and is late for his shift. Voyager encounters some Alpha Quadrant tech in the form of a Cardassian smart missile that B'Elanna once reprogrammed to work for the Maquis. Though it was brought here by the caretaker like so many others, and confused, thinks a random Delta Quadrant world is its target. Torres ends up talking to herself and trying to convince a determined missile to stand down. She manages to destroy the device just before Janeway is willing to sacrifice Voyager to stop the thing before it kills millions. The plot is pretty straightforward, but a good early look at B'Elanna struggling against herself and simultaneously showing us her awesome engineering expertise as she goes through an OG escape room.
Ah, computer.
That program is available.
Thanks, Major. Major, Major. Thanks, Major. Major, Major.
Affirmative. The opposing force grew in direct proportion to the power output of the Enterprise.
Thanks, Major.
Personal logs are restricted.
Major, Major.
By accessing available imagery, an adequate facsimile was possible.
Thanks, Major.
Warp energy has increased 14%.
Thanks, Major. Major.
Override authority restricted.
Thanks, Major.
Holodeck 3 program is reinstated.
Major, Major.
Enter when ready.
Thanks, Major.
End simulation. Fatal exposure.
Major, Major.
Fatal exposure in 12 minutes.
Thanks, Major.
Risa is climate controlled for optimum tourist comfort.
Major, Major.
No commonalities noted.
Thanks, Major.
Submicroscopic deformations are present.
Thanks, Major, Major.
The patterns are identical.
Thanks, Major.
Cargo Bay 4.
Major, Major.
All power to ejection systems has been terminated and cannot be restored.
Thanks, Major.
Computer ready.
Major, Major.
Self-destruct sequence has been initiated.
Thanks, Major.
Warp core overload in 11 minutes.
Major, Major.
Warp core overload in 3 minutes.
Thanks, Major.
Confirmed. Sequence terminated.
Thanks, Major, Major.
Disengaging safety protocols presents extreme risk of injury.
Thanks, Major.
The program is active.
Major, Major.
Immersion shielding activated.
Thanks, Major.
Lieutenant Torres is in Holodeck 1.
Major, Major.
Hull breach is imminent.
Thanks, Major.
Program activated.
Major, Major.
Access to those files is restricted.
Thanks, Major.
The anomaly is consistent with a Class 1 wormhole.
Thanks, Major, Major.